Welcome to the Slade ham experiment, everybody. I know if this is your first flight, it may sound a little rough outside. There's some tornadic activity. There's some tornado-like stuff happening outside. It's pitch black. If you look out your windows to the left or the right, if there were windows in the back, it would look exactly the same. So it's possible. That's for sure part of a tree falling. This is gonna be a weird one. We might be in and out. It's unlikely that I'm gonna make the full journey without having to stop and put some duct tape on the outside of the midnight spaceship. So let me bid you a fine welcome. Hello, hi, how are you? I want to say thanks to a great number of you who reached out for my birthday on Monday. Mary, the gift showed up, and let me say thank you. That's the simplest way to put it. I'll send you a direct message, but the thoughtfulness and the accuracy of that is just so welcome. Cheers to all of you. This is still coffee, if you were wondering. I haven't gotten into it just yet. So if you guys are ready, we'll do an episode. I have things I want to talk about, plans for what I'm doing through the summer, things I don't know, decades if we get to it, and where I was this past weekend. It's a Slade ham experiment episode, and it starts now. Well, the rain has turned to hail, which means the weather's only going to get worse. This is what it's supposed to be doing 2 or 3 hours from now, yet here it is. I was just in some weather of my own, but only briefly. I spent my birthday weekend in the mountains of Appalachia, and I've never been more wrong about a place. I've been to more of the world than I've been to America. I haven't been to a lot of places here. I've never been to Yosemite. I've never been to Yellowstone. I've never been to the Grand Canyon. And I'd never spent real time in Appalachia. The furthest I'd made it was Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, some of the Smokies. I'd been out to visit my friend, the blacksmith, on the Virginia-Tennessee border, the Tennessee-North Carolina, somewhere right around that area, Bristolish. But I was there in winter, and I never really got out into the mountains. So this trip, a good stretch of the Appalachian Trail, 15 plus miles, less than 20. Rowan's Gap, that area. There's a couple of ways to do a hike like that, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. Well, there went the door. Give me a second. I'll be right back. I'll have to edit that part back together. The show must go on. I'm very deliberate. Are we going to lose power now too? I'm very intentional about not missing an episode, even when I don't want to do one. This is how I hold myself accountable as a self-employed human being. It's about 8 hours on the Appalachian Trail. Maybe not. I don't know. It's a full day. And this was the way to do it. You begin in a cabin in the middle of the forest with no light pollution, where you can see the stars all the way to galaxies that aren't ours, with a hot tub and a big outdoor fireplace. That's what you want on the bookends of a full day like that. The alternative is to hike it and camp and bring all your stuff. Very similar to some of what I did in Chile this past autumn. Also similar to what I did on a canoe trip once. And it made me think, it was one of my first real, probably, I don't know, adventure trips. It's back in 2008-ish. I'd done a bunch of cool stuff. I'd been some places, but I'd never really, with some friends of mine, gone out and done a trip like that wasn't just camping in a drive-up spot, maybe. So we did 5 days on Boquillas Canyon in Big Bend. I'm telling you this to tell you why the story popped into my head, and it's one of the hardest times I've ever laughed in my whole life. And when it comes to the ridiculousness of a scenario, just piling on top of itself until you can't take anymore, and you're sort of exempt as a spectator. It's in my book if you haven't read it. But we're on this trip. It's me, my friend Emery, his friend, and then another friend of theirs, and then that guy's girlfriend, and then a girl that I knew previously, but she wasn't there with me. She was there through a different friend. Anyway, we're all on the trip. that me and the girl aren't together is the point. And over the course of 5 days, I was having the time of my life, but me and these girls were not getting along at all. They were, just one of them had been living in the forest with the Rainbow Coalition or Children of the Forest or something down in Florida, where they dumpster dive and eat squirrels that happen to fall out of the tree. Well, landed right in the gumbo pot. Those people. I say those people like any of us know who those people are. We don't know any of those people. We hear stories about those people, but one of those people is with you who's been in a society that's all egalitarian, and they've all been helping each other and doing chores and this and that, and she somehow, I'm sure her role in it was to do very little, because on this trip she did very little, like no paddling, no nothing, no whatever. And she and the other little girl, the dude's girlfriend, they're being catty little women. And the dude had brought some hash on the trip, right? For the campfire sitting around. Now, I don't know if you've ever been down to the border of Texas. It's not very hard to bring drugs down there. It's easy. No one does it because it's all there. But when you're coming back from Mexico, one of the most important things you should ever do is make sure that you have smoked every joint in your cigarette pack, that you have emptied your backpack of every little nugget, seed, or remnant that might have fallen into it. You certainly shouldn't bring an aluminum foil wrapped Ziploc baggie full of hash or what's left of it. It was such a minor amount. And I know this because we were in 2 cars on the way back. And the car we were in had the guy and his girlfriend and the backpack with the hash. And I woke up to the sound of all of this. And there's this little angry Mexican cop who kind of sounded German. He was very, very, you're going to have to go over here. And then look, man, I'm just saying. It's a terrible accent, but that's, he was just kind of like that. Somebody is going to have to tell me who's the drugs is. And if you don't tell me who's the drugs is, I'm going to take you out to jail. So we're all standing there, 4 of us in a line like the usual suspects. They haven't made us read any lines. There's no, give me the keys, you cocksucking motherfucker. We're just standing there. Is somebody going to tell me who the drugs is? They're not my drugs. I'm just standing there. Emery's standing there too. The dude and his girlfriend are also standing there. Now, I'm not going to snitch on anybody. I'm not that type of dude, right? I'm going to create a situation eventually. If we all go down for this, I'm going to create a situation where you have to take credit for it. I just, But I'm not going to snitch on you. I'm going to force you into snitching on yourself. But we're early in the game with this. We're all sitting there. Is nobody going to tell me who's the drugs is? And then the girl starts rocking back and forth. What's up with her? Does she have some more drugs inside of her? And then she tells the cop, I have to pee. And that's all this cop needed was a teeny tiny bit of leverage on one of us. But here is the problem. Nobody can go to the bathroom until someone tells me who's the drugs is. So, all right, well, I'm good. I haven't been chugging whatever they've been drinking, Gatorade or whatever in the back seat. I'm Hakuna Matata. So she's rocking some more. This dude keeps smacking his little leather glove up against his hand. Who's this the drugs? Nobody says anything. She says, I have to go to the bathroom for the 47th time. Everybody's quiet about the drugs. And then I just watched this girl's khaki pants turn darker khaki. From one location to the next, like she was being watercolored, and just into a puddle, right there. And that's when her boyfriend was finally like, "All right, they were my drugs." That was, I was on the floor. I'm surprised they didn't arrest me for the sounds I was making, rolling around on that dirty South Texas police floor. I couldn't breathe. When she started peeing for real, I thought I was gonna I thought I had sucked all the air. The way they put out fires desert fires, like oil fires in the Midwest and West Texas, how they make a bigger explosion so there's no oxygen left for the fire to burn. Hell fighting, I think they call it. That's what I felt like. Like I had sucked in all the oxygen, and then when I tried to get more, I had sucked it in from so far into there was no oxygen left to be had. And that cop was like, okay, the rest of you can go. And we left. There was no questions asked. Should we wait for them in the morning? Absolutely not. This is someone else's problem. I am not spending another 24 hours in Marfa, Texas while we wait for a dude who was too dumb to not bring his drugs through a border check station. Let me tell you where I'm at in my career. I've gotten to a point, and I've studied this struggle and talked about it a lot, and that's the reason I talk about it and the reason I write about it, because it helps me organize my thoughts. But you ever just realize at some point, you're like, I am incredible at what I do for a living, but I don't understand the politics and the math and the stuff you got to do to be successful at it. Because being good and being successful, two totally different things. And a lot of where I'm at has to do with my own stubbornness and my own unwillingness rather, to do a lot of things. I get all that. But I am a fan of game theory. I do believe that you can do the math on certain things and extrapolate the outcome. Why is it that with comedy, you can't take something like a comedy special? It's no different than any other movie or album or released by an artist. Why can't you take that? Why can't you find a way to put that in front of the people looking for that product, target it like a laser into certain cities, and then go back to the people in those cities who have seen what you did, who have seen your product, who have liked your product, and then sell them tickets to you coming to perform live? This seems very simple. But game theory is more complicated than that. Position matters. Different elements matter than just one or two variables. Are you early to the game or late? I think about that. I've talked about that, right? Podcasting, comedy specials. In some ways, my position was too fresh. Now, in some ways, it's too late. That matters. There should be an answer to this game that I have been playing. But then I am reminded of other theories, like the infinite game theory. And I think it was some podcast, I can't remember whose podcast, but they were talking about finite games versus infinite games, and they were citing Simon Sinek's book, which I think is called The Infinite Game. Do I have this written down? But yeah, Simon Sinek's Infinite Game. But that was based on a book I had read before by James Carse, Finite and Infinite Games. And it's one of the things that's been rattling around in my brain as I've tried to figure out my place in entertainment right now. And this is what I challenge any of you to do. As you think about, this is what I've been trying to vocalize, social media and things like that. It is a finite game. You are fishing for a certain end result from a finite pool of attention. James Carse describes it as this. There are at least two kinds of games, finite and infinite. A finite game is played for the purpose of winning, and an infinite game for the purpose of continuing the play. That's how I play with my nephew, right? I don't want to win. I want to keep this back and forth going, this experience going. It's how relationships should be. You're not trying to have the upper hand in the relationship. You're trying to keep the relationship going. He continues, finite games are those instrumental activities from sports to politics to wars in which the participants obey rules, recognize boundaries, and announce winners and losers. The infinite game, and there is only one, includes any authentic interaction from touching to culture that changes rules, plays, and boundaries, and they exist solely for the purpose of continuing the game. A finite player seeks power, and the infinite one displays self-sufficient strength. Here's what I think. If you look at the way I've accidentally looked at comedy, how can I just keep this going? How can I just continue to do what I do? I've been playing an infinite game. The problem is what's being rewarded are the finite game winners. Those are the ones getting the dates, filling the theaters, doing the things I want to be doing in some regard. Now, the way I play the game, I'm never at risk of running out of ideas. The well will never go dry. I've trained myself to not care about the final result, but to make the final thing and then move to the next. I'm in a weird place creatively like that. But when you're focused on the long term, the way to longevity is by deeply understanding the art you're involved in, right? I think about why I never really did anything cool as like a comic book artist. And it's because I never took the time to really understand what I was doing. I can copy a Jim Lee drawing pretty well, but he has to have done all the work because I don't understand fundamentally how human anatomy works. I can draw a leg in a certain position because I've seen it and can emulate it, but I don't understand the way the muscles connect and the tendons move and that gravity pulls on that. I certainly don't understand the way light hits it or bounces or reflects. That's all the stuff I realize are deficiencies that keep me from ever really being good at that particular art form. I've beaten most of those in stand-up. I understand it deeply. Writing, same thing on a lot of fronts. But I also understand where the blind spots are, and they're things I don't know that I could have seen before when I was focused solely on how can I do this thing the most efficiently, the quickest, the fastest, the best, because that ultimately is me playing a finite game. So when I zoom out, I can see these blind spots, I can see the dead ends I've hit, I can see where progress is stopped, and I can think about how changing the game I'm playing can get me different results. My search for these answers, right? That's what I'm trying to solve. How do you turn this into that? What is the digital alchemy? I've met a great number of people who all have the answer. All of them. Except none of them have the answer. They all only know what worked for them. And what worked for them is not formulaic. It's a hodgepodge conglomeration of things that they found and slammed into a pattern and said, this is the way. And it's not. I wish more people would just confidently say, I don't know. Why is that such a difficult thing to just not have an opinion? It's more dangerous when the group you're in has an opinion. We think that, shit, here we go. Once we start thinking, then we got to start doing stuff. Then once we start doing stuff, all hell breaks loose. Well, what do you think? I don't. How you like them apples or lack thereof? Because once I have an opinion, then I got to defend it. Next thing you know, we're storming the Capitol. And that guy with the beanie was not me. I only have so much energy. I can only be so moved. I hear you. Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, homeless people down the street. I got it. But you guys, these wars have been going on for a while. Some of this stuff, the Middle East has been trying to figure itself out since before people could even write about it. So I got 6 neurons left, and only 4 of them are allocated for Karen. I've been wrung dry for everything. The Ukraine has beaten me. Harambe beat me 8 years ago. They've been hustling me since those kids in the 80s with the flies on their face. And I've just been asked for everything there is to ask of a human being. And I'm just taking a pause from all of my caring to focus on the 2 or 3 things around me. Thank you very much. Every grocery store register, every spun around POS with the tipping system that starts at 30%. You need too much. Your girls selling you dumb cookies outside. Can you please help me? There's a guy with one leg asking me for change. He's hitting me up on the way in and on the way out. He's just so accustomed to asking people for stuff. He hadn't even stopped to pause to thank the people who gave him stuff. And I can't do it. Is there anything else I can do besides yell or retweet or give you money to your GoFundMe that is completely unsanctioned and completely not managed, and your website goes to a redirected 405? Please tell me I can help or care without actually having to care. Because let's be honest, caring is the currency of this decade, of the whatever we're going to call the 20s, the first decade that we can actually call a decade. I don't know what these last two, these nameless periods of 10 years have been prior to this one. But of the 2000s, this is the first one we can we're living in the 20s, folks. In this particular decade, you can define almost every decade. If you go all the way back as long as my little memory, as long as we've been naming them. But when they got a simple name like the 20s, it's easier for us to encapsulate them. Have you noticed that? If I say the 80s, your brain explodes in neon. If I say 2010 through 2020, what does your brain do? It's trying to grab it. It doesn't know what to do. Every decade has had an identity. The ones I lived through, the 70s, the 60s, remember that? How hippie that was? I don't remember it, but I've read. It's the Beatles. Everything's love. Drugs, sex, rock and roll. The 70s. I don't know what the 70s really were, but I can give you the music, and I can give you the vehicles, and I can give you the politics. Certainly give you the fashion and the decor. Burnt orange, tail end of mid-century modern stuff, lots of wood paneling. I hate those colors. Olive green, lime. But you get into the 80s, it starts to get fun. The 80s might be, and I can't speak for any other demographic on this planet, but if you were a young kid like me growing up in Southeast Texas, in my circumstances, the 80s did not suck. I had it was an explosion of imagination, right? All the cartoons, all the comic books, all of the movies, everything cool happened in the 80s. You were free. Nothing was really taboo. There were tons of horrible things. Tons and tons and tons. I get it. They just weren't in my circle, so my memory remains untainted. And I'm not going to taint it in post. I'm not going to go back and retcon my memory. It's just I'm going to let it be a good thing, and I'm going to live different going further. The 90s were an explosion of all the other colors. All in the 90s looks like the inside of Will Smith's jacket to me. Chaotic casino floor patterns and purples and reds and yellows. Cheesy hip-hop. There was a lot of... You know what the 90s feels like. But then what happens when you get to the 2000s? That's what I call them. What about the 20-teens, 10s, tweens? I don't know what those are. How do you define those generations? They're moderately forgotten. I was gone for all of those 2000s. I was spending a month a year in Canada. I was spending 2 months a year overseas. So a full quarter of my year was not even in the United States. I don't even know what happened in that decade. After 9/11, your guess is as good as mine. I remember being the last real free time I remember. For everything went, it's like a core memory for me. For everything went south. Not south, but started changing. I was in Bahrain at Crumb's Bar in 2008. I was with Sam Damaris, my friend Rodney, who's the second gayest person I know. No, actually, Rodney's the gayest. Anyway, and then my friend Doug, who was running that part, the MWR there on the base for the Navy, I guess Navy Entertainment, and Graham and what's the other guy's name? One of them was English, one of them was Indian. They both had English accents. Maybe one of them was Scottish. We sat around that bar. I don't think there's ever been any place where there were less taboos than Crumb's Bar in 2008, the day we all sat there. We had a show that night on base. We were day drinking at Rodney's. Crumbs had mirrors on the floor of the bathroom so that when you passed out and had to crawl out, you could see your shame. There were many other Rodney stories. Rodney drove a very bright yellow convertible. Man, I didn't say hi to Rodney. I think we're still Facebook friends. I know that. I remember Facebook because that was the day I was introduced to it. I wasn't on it. I was against it. Oh, this new thing. I'm not doing it. Everybody, this is the thing. You got to do the thing. And I caved and I joined Facebook based on that day's conversation. And then us and Graham and that other dude and Doug and Rod, we all drank. I think I had 13 Guinness sitting at that bar. And then we all piled into Rodney's gay convertible and drove back to the base. And we got dropped off and somehow they let us back in. And we pulled ourselves together and we did that show that night. That was when I met the Meatloaf impersonator. There were 2 Meatloaf impersonators on the island of Bahrain at the same time, which sounds like an odd statement. God, that was a weird. Anyway, it's the last time I remember everything being free. And then we busted into the 2010s and everything was good with the bad, COVID. And then we all, now we know what the 20s are. So we got to pick a name for the 20s. It's not the Roaring 20s. We'll think about it. If you got an idea, leave it in the comments. We'll figure it out. The whining 20s might be a good start as we attempt to identify where we are and what we're doing. I wish you all well, and I say thank you for all of the comments on the special. You guys are watching it. I appreciate it. If you haven't left a comment, just go do it. You can, whatever, it helps. I'd like to come to a city near you. We're trying to make all of that happen. My full schedule's up at sladeham.com. Those of you who get my newsletter know that before everyone else because the dates are updated there first. You can join that at sladeham.com. Same place you can get my book at sladeham.com. You can also go there to watch the special. There's a link at sladeham.com. There's a lot of me there, and there's a lot of me here. There's a lot of love in my heart for all of you out there. Cheers to all of you. Put a pin in all these thoughts. I'm going to go see if the world has blown away or if a house has ended up here from Kansas or whatnot. Cheers, and I'll see you on another episode soon.